Welcome back to A Mindful Moment. How are you doing, Melissa?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm very happy that there's some sunshine outside and it's no longer gloomy here in Southern California.
I know. Well, it's funny you say that because part of what I want to talk to you about today and to our listeners is includes weather. But it started with I was really somewhat dismayed. I don't know if you saw the reports that came out, the analysis on PFAs.
Mm.
So, for those who don't know, PFAs they're called forever chemicals, and they're in a lot of plastics, but they're in a lot of other things. And there's more than 15,000 types of PFAs, which means there's not an easy fix or an easy solution to the problem. And the problem is they've done all these tests and they found that they are everywhere. So they think they're in almost every single American's blood. They're in snow. They're in like snow in Antarctica. They're in rain. They're in lakes. They're in everything they test has these PFAs. And so I did some research because I'm like, well, how serious is this PFA problem? And of course, it's been linked to testicular and kidney cancers, developmental delays in kids, decreased fertility, liver damage, low birth weight, birth defects, damage to our immune system. I mean, there's this long list of not great things, right? And so it got me thinking about how maybe, and I know I'm guilty of this too, but maybe we're not quite linking our environment and the climate and our health. Like we do something, it creates a problem. That problem can affect the climate. The climate can affect not just weather, but then affect our living environment. Like I'm wondering if we're failing to connect the dots and then to see if we can be more mindful about our own actions to maybe help mitigate some of this. So,
I think we definitely need to connect the dots a little better. It's when we spoke about talking about this, I had actually just seen an article pop up on my Apple News about it was like an award-winning article about this woman that used to work at 3M. So 3M, if you don't know, they make post-it notes, scotch tape, scotch guard, all kinds of stuff. And so she was a scientist there, a research scientist there in the 80s, 80s and 90s. And she had started doing research. Her boss had come to her saying, I need you to test this blood for these PFAs. And so she was like curious why. And he said, well, we found it in the blood of some of our workers. And so we just want to make sure that it's not extending outside of our area. And he told her that it was not harmful, that he didn't say harmless, but he just said it was not harmful. So it turns out that 3M has known that these PFAs were in blood and groundwater and everything all around their plants since the early 70s. And they'd been sweeping it under the rug. And so she had all this drama, ended up leaving 3M, and then wanted to ignore the PFA thing because it also found that women had lower rates of it in their blood because once they got pregnant, they passed it on to their unborn children.
oh my gosh.
It's a nightmare. So she didn't even want to think about it, didn't want to deal with it. Her boss had told her it was not harmful, so she wasn't really concerned about it. Then she started seeing all of these articles about how bad it really is. So she felt like she needed to come forward. And so she came forward. But now all of these executives from 3M are so old, they're all playing I can't remember those things anymore. But they have found documentation that they are guilty of this. And so they have been fined by the EPA several times for it. But it's shocking. It is in everything.
Well,
Everything.
it is, and I agree. It's really I can't say I'm shocked that maybe a corporation knew a long time ago and didn't tell us, but I thought, well, okay, do I use anything? And because this is one of the things about mindfulness. So we want to be conscious and aware really of everything we can, which includes, and I do try to do this with, like, say, when I'm shopping, which we can talk about in a minute. But I was like, well, do I already use things that PFAs are in that I don't even know, right? So here's just a partial list: microwave popcorn bags,
Mhm.
disposable razors, stain resistant carpeting, toys, fast food packaging, shampoos, raincoats, firefighting foam, some shoes like waterproof shoes. I read an article where Hush Puppy has a little problem with this too. Teflon nonstick skillets. That's the one thing I did know. I didn't know why, but I knew that there was something in the Teflon that we weren't supposed to have. But dental floss, you mentioned Scotch Guard fabric protector. So basically, because they're
Dental
in
floss. We're like putting it like in our
dental floss, yes,
oh my
dental floss.
gosh.
So basically, we've known for 40, 50 years that this is toxic to not just us. It's in animals. It's everywhere, right? Plants. But now it's everywhere because it is so powerful as a product. See, this is the problem with plastic, right? It's really hard to find a replacement. But that means it's just part of our everyday lives. So I want to say before we even get further into this that this is not about us fixing this problem, right? We can't fix this
We
problem,
can't.
but it's about making us more mindful about what we do going forward. Like, I don't know if I want to give up my microwave popcorn, but I'll have to think about that now because, like, at least I'm aware, right? So, and I don't eat it very often, but I'll have to really think about that one. But the problem, I think, is that we have grown so accustomed to convenience.
Hmm.
And now we don't want to give that up for understandable reasons. But I think if we're a little more mindful about it, we can make better decisions because we're doing things that are harming us without even realizing it because, we're just mindless about it. It's like, oh, and believe me, I thoroughly enjoy the ease of microwave popcorn because it used to be a hassle to cook it on the stove. Now I'm thinking maybe it's not that big of a hassle.
I actually do popcorn on the stove, and not even for that reason, but now I'm glad that I do because I love it on the stove.
So basically, we're using a lot of products in our modern lives that are really horrible either for us or the environment. And the environmental issues then, of course, become climate issues. And I'm not talking about climate or climate change from a political perspective. I wish we would stop making everything political. I'm just talking about as a species, we need to be mindful about what we are doing, what our actions cause. One of the things I'm guilty of this is I feel like I produce too much trash. I don't mean to, but then what prompts that feeling is my trash constantly needs to be taken out. And I'm like, where's all the trash coming from? So again, I did a little research and it turns out the average American produces about 6 pounds of trash per day. So if you're a
Per
family of
day?
four, a day.
What?
Yeah. So
No, there's no way I produce 6 pounds of trash. That's absurd. Wow.
yeah, 6 pounds a day. Now, about
That's
a
insane.
pound and a half of that goes into the recycling bin if you have recycling in your municipality. We can talk about that in a minute too, because that doesn't mean it all makes it to be recycled. So let's say even at 4.5 pounds of trash, solid waste matter that goes to a dump. That means for one person, it's 1,642 pounds a year. So a family of four is about
Wow.
6,500 pounds. That's over 3 tons of trash. And if you multiply that by the number of humans on the planet, that's why we have a trash problem. It's everywhere. So, and of course, it's not just the trash. And if you look this up, it would be comical if it wasn't sad. But so many countries try to ship their trash to other countries because they don't have room left in theirs. So they pick like a poor country, ship it there. China was taking some of our trash for some reason. Now they've stopped that. So we're moving trash around, but we're not lessening it, which is the problem. And of course, landfills produce methane, other organic compounds that then contribute to climate change, and they can even create local smog.
Yeah.
So if you picture this, it's like, again, I know I make too much trash. I'm trying to pay attention, but the first key is to be mindful about it, right? And that means starting at the beginning. When you go to buy something, are you thinking through where's this going to end up? Is it something I'm going to keep forever? Is it disposable and it's going to go straight into the trash? Is it something that's toxic? And if so, am I really going to process it correctly? Like I do go to the city centers, like if I have any electronic equipment or batteries or paint or things like that. But I know a lot of people don't. They just throw it in the trash, right? And so back to the PFAs, because they're in a lot of plastics. I also looked up plastic because I'm like, okay, plastic is something that we're sold this idea that it's recyclable. But in fact, only about 9 to 12% of it is recyclable. And
Hmm.
it's because, honestly, and I will never do this, wash my trash, but a lot of it has to do with the type of plastic and it has to do with what was in the plastic.
Mm.
So if you use gallon jug milks, I don't drink milk, but the milk, evidently they can't recycle most of those because it's coated with dried milk inside and they don't have a way, an economical way
Oh,
to clean it. So it's recommended that you wash it out. Well, I barely have time to recycle, much less wash trash,
yeah.
right? I'm just going to be honest. I probably won't do that, but I don't use that particular thing, but I'm trying to be mindful now about what is this? The other thing with plastics is plastic never goes away. It's like the PFAs. They can't even figure out the life, like the half-life, like they do with nuclear waste.
Hmm.
They don't know when it ever disintegrates. I don't know if it does.
I don't think it
So
does. Yeah.
with plastic, what they do, they can't completely recycle it, but they call it downcycle. They can keep reusing it until it's to the point that it's just not worth using,
Mm.
but then it's still here, but in
Hmm.
the trash.
Yeah, I
So,
do. I do rinse out my recyclables, and then our neighborhood or our city has started this composting program.
mm,
So they're finding people. So if you're not composting your food into
yeah,
the green bin, which is like your yard waste,
yeah,
then if they find food in your trash can and they link it to your house, then you're going to get fined.
wow.
And in my mind, it's like, well, that's wonderful. We should all be doing that. But then at the same time, it's like, oh my God, what a pain. Like,
Right.
I have to have,
Separate
now
everything
I
out.
have to have another trash can. But I think the point here is that our planet is a wonderful, beautiful, amazing planet.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be easy. We shouldn't expect it to be easy to maintain its beauty and what it gives back to us. So if we can kind of look at it that way, like it's giving us so much, we should have to work a little bit to keep it, beautiful in the way it is and to feed us. We need to feed it.
No, I think that that's a beautiful perspective. I think if all of us behave that way, you're right. Well, I can't even imagine what the effect would be. But I think when you turn it around and you look at things like we're in California, right? So we're given different colored trash cans and there's a recycling program and the schools have recycling programs, but there are many, many parts of the country that don't even offer that service.
Yeah.
So what do all of those people do, right? What do
Right.
they do with their trash? Even if it's recyclable, if there's no recycling program, it's going into the dump, right?
Well, and even think about, there's such a huge movement towards living off grid and homesteading. They don't have a trash truck. They have to manage their waste. And
Yeah,
it would be interesting to kind of see like how homesteading and, off grid families do that
yeah.
in an efficient way, because maybe we could learn something from them.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point too. Yeah, it's complicated. Like a part of my message today is this can feel like it's too late or it's too big or there's nothing we can do, but really there's a lot of us. So if even each of us that's listening to this tries to just be mindful about it. And some things are easy. Disposable water bottles.
Oh,
That's one of
they
the
drive
biggest.
me crazy.
So if you think about this, and I looked up the numbers to see, I know it's bad, and I've seen like the big pools of them in the ocean, and I mean, it's just awful. But turns out in the United States alone, we use 50 billion plastic disposable bottles a year. I didn't look up straws, but the straws are bad too. I mean, they're banned in a lot of places here, but 50 billion just in the United States. So worldwide, 500 billion a year, and they don't break down. So again, this would be an easy one, like to just be mindful about it. I'm not going to say I never drink water out of a plastic bottle. That's not true. I do have metal water bottles. I have metal straws. I take them with me. But if I'm out and about, I run out of water, I'm thirsty, it's hot here. I'm not going to say I won't stop at a 7-Eleven or something and buy a bottle of water. Or if we go to a meeting and they're serving water, bottled water, I'm not going to not drink it. But I never buy bottled water for my use unless
Yeah.
I'm not at home and something, like I said, I'm out somewhere and I need water. So that would be an easy thing to do. That's not painful at all. And actually, the water tastes better. So if you really think about anything disposable, so that'd be the first maybe mindfulness tip is we are all going to use disposable things. So this isn't about trying to guilt trip anybody, but it's just a matter of take a moment and think about it. I'm really trying now with my paper towels. I use too many paper towels.
I'm terrible with paper towels. I will admit that.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, so I've got like 3 or 4 hand towels in the kitchen right now to try to just because part of it's a habit.
Well,
But
not just that, but it's such a conundrum because Part of the reason I stopped using hand towels was because it was ingrained in our society, especially here in California, that we're in a drought. Okay.
Yeah.
So use
Yep.
as little water as possible. So
Yes.
I'm not going to keep washing towels because I'm wasting a lot. It's like this constant thing of like, what's the thing now? Is
Yeah.
it a
Yeah.
drought? Is it this? Is it that? And how do I contribute? So I think, yeah, like just trying to do your best, but definitely paper towels that's my downfall. It's cooking dinner. I'm using 10 paper towels
I
just
know.
cooking dinner. Like, oh my gosh.
I know. And it's a trade-off. And that's kind of the point here. It's always going to be a trade-off. But if we're just mindful, if we're just paying attention. So like if I'm doing something in the kitchen, because I got into the habit of using paper towels so much, I automatically wash my hands and reach for a paper towel. Well, there's no
Same.
reason not to dry my hands on a towel, right? So it's just simple things like that that you can start to be more mindful about it. I thought this was, I don't know, serendipitous this morning. I had the news on, but no sound on, waiting for the weather to come on. And I saw this thing come up about the no buy year pledge, which is trending on social media, but who knew? Because I'm not
No
following
buy
it.
as in like no purchase.
No purchase, yeah. And so it evidently started several years ago, somebody's blog, and they were talking about mindful spending. And now it's like this super popular thing, I guess. But it's basically focusing on not buying non-essential items. So like impulse items, unneeded things like, how many of us go into a store and see cute shoes, beauty products? How many people buy beauty products because it's going to make me gorgeous or going to erase wrinkles or without really knowing if it works, and then you use it once or twice and then it becomes trash. So this whole movement is about being mindful when you shop to really think through, is this something I'm going to use? Is it something I need? And I'm not saying don't buy anything if you like something, but even think about the things in the past you've bought that you like. You saw something, it was just adorable. You've got to have that for your table or your mantle. And then how long do you keep it before you're tired of it or it's hard to clean? And then where does it go? But then the other upside of this, besides the environment, is a number of people saving money. So they're specifically doing not just for the environment, but because they're either in debt and they want to
Mm.
reduce their credit card debt, or because they want to save money. So each time you pause, which is the most mindful thing you can do, you're doing good for not just you, but for the greater good, right? So you're helping yourself financially and you're helping the environment. But that made me think about big ticket items. And this is what drives me insane is this whole obsolescence that's being built into everything so that we'll keep buying more, right? And I think I told you back when this happened, Melissa, but when my refrigerator died, it was 10 years old. And I know I'm older, but in the old days, they lasted 20, 25 years. So when I went to the store, I said, it's only 10 years old. And the sales guy was like, wow, that's really great because they only last now 5 to 8 years. Picture how many refrigerators are sitting in landfills.
My mother-in-law, her washer and dryer are older than I am. Not even kidding. They were made to last. And you're right. Nothing lasts anymore.
No. And so some of this, again, is going to be out of our control. But if you think about it, if you think about how much TVs have come down in price, how much,
Mm.
a ton of electronics seem cheap now compared to what they were when they first came out. So many people just throw them away when they stop working instead of checking to see, could it be repaired?
Yeah.
I now really consider before buying anything, is this something that I'm going to end up throwing into a dump in 3 years or 2 years or 1 year or whatever it is? So that's another way to be mindful. Another one is, and I know this isn't going to be popular, but is smartphones. People are paying big bucks to figure out how to lure you into the shiniest, latest thing, which usually it's like an extra camera or something on it. You know what I mean? It's not like something really necessary for the phone. In the United States, we throw away 416,000 cell phones a year. They
Wow.
go into the dump. I'm sorry, a day, not a year, a day.
A day?
416,000 a day in the United States. So it's
Wow.
151.8 million a year. Now, the problem with that is not only that it's in the dumps, those phones are full of toxic chemicals, things that are very, very harmful to the environment and to us. So I know there's this huge pressure, like you got to get a new phone every year or two. But if you're going to do that, if that's your thing, then instead of throwing the phone away, you can wipe it and donate it because there's a lot of people in the world that can't afford a phone. So
Yeah.
then at least it's being reused. It's not piling up in a dump,
I
sitting
don't know. I mean, for
in
me, it's
landfills.
like I would never throw that kind of stuff in the trash. It just doesn't like, it doesn't feel right to throw it in the trash. Number one, because it's such a big ticket item, like
Yeah,
it's valuable. I'm not throwing that in the trash.
yeah,
But I'll usually trade it in so that the phone company will recycle whatever's in it. And
yep.
if they actually do, who knows? There is a lot of stuff where our hands are tied, but I think just doing your part. And even if you think like, we talked about the politics part, that, climate change should not be a political issue. Sometimes it's forced on us to be a political issue.
It is. It's big, big money.
It's huge money. And I actually did a little bit of research that when climate change actually turned political, and it was in the 80s when a company called the Global Climate Coalition, they started lobbying in Washington, D.C., when we were doing all of these EPA regulations, and big companies were joining with this Global Climate Coalition. And so the name of it sounds like, oh, they're all for keeping the climate, down and keeping things going. But it turns out that the companies that were paying them, they've since parted ways. But we're talking about DuPont, Dow Chemicals, 3M, huge companies, and a lot of big energy companies too were also on board with them. And so now they've actually parted ways. And BP, which is the petroleum company, gas company, they actually came out and said, we can no longer ignore that we are contributing to the cause of global warming. And so they parted ways with them. But so that's kind of when it turned political. And so it's difficult for us as, citizens to ignore that these companies are kind of really contributing to all of this. And how do we mindfully go about our lives on a daily basis and not feel like we're also contributing to that? And so my point here is that if you're just doing those little things, shut out all the noise. Okay. Just as long as you can go to sleep at night going, okay, I did my best today. I, didn't throw away a bunch of plastic. I didn't, do things that are going to contribute. I mean, even me gardening with all of the bugs. Oh my gosh, I want to use Roundup so bad, but I'm not going to. I will not, because instead of me just thinking like I'm not going to support that horrible company, what I think in my brain is this is going into the soil, and the bunnies and the squirrels and the birds that are going to eat the snails and the slugs that are in that soil, I'm going to poison all of them. So I'm just trying to think like those 10 steps ahead of what is my impact of using this thing. And I think that's the same we should do with everything, with our bottled water, with the foods that we use, the packaging, the styrofoam. Don't even get me started on styrofoam. Plastic bags from the grocery store, all of those things. If we can just think 10 steps ahead of the impact cascading from that one decision, then all of us doing that can really help.
Unfortunately, I know this is going to stay a political issue again because of the amount of money involved. That's what runs this country. I mean, most countries, frankly, is greed or wealth, and so no one wants to give that up at all for longevity, like of the species. And I get that, the way the brain works, the way we're wired, the way we're conditioned. But it's getting serious now. I mean, it's been getting serious, but I mean, now we can visibly all see it. All of this garbage, the methane, the greenhouse gases, all of that's starting to affect the climate. I think everybody's aware. Most places are either a lot hotter or colder than they used to be. So last year was a record-breaking year for heat, hottest year ever, I think, measured on the planet. Again, connecting the dots. So even just like what you were saying, doing our little part, recognizing that, these companies are doing things that maybe we can't control, but we can make choices about what we buy or what we do or what we're going to use the thing for. But then to keep in mind the effect. Like, so in addition to poisoning the wildlife or possibly your own family, if it's into your groundwater, there's this issue of the weather. We can't avoid the weather. As we're recording this, in the last week and a half, there have been 2 really bad incidences of air turbulence in planes where people have been really seriously injured, and unfortunately one man died. That's another symptom of the climate shifting and us not being able to detect it in advance, what's happening. So it's affecting us in at these levels of things like I just saw this morning, I forgot, 1,100 flights were canceled due to weather over the last couple of days. So all those people that were trying to get to or from somewhere for Memorial Day weekend were stuck. Miami over the holiday weekend, the heat index hit 112. It was
Wow.
98 degrees plus the humidity made it feel like 112,
Wow.
right? That's hot.
Well, and the tornadoes
Mhm.
and hurricanes they're predicting for this next year are going to be outrageous.
And again, we can't stop now. I mean, they were telling us for a long time, you need to stop. We can't stop. I mean, we can't stop it now from happening. So anything we're doing though is going to mitigate or slow down it getting
Slow
worse.
it down. Yeah.
And we don't want it to get worse. Europe is the fastest warming continent. They are expecting temperatures to hit 118 degrees in Europe this summer for up to 2 weeks or more. 118 in Europe.
I had no idea it got that warm there.
I well, it didn't used to get that warm there.
Whoa.
And then, okay, so now we've got the garbage going. We've got, okay, I drive a car. It's still a gas car. Why is it still a gas car? Because there's not enough charging stations for me to even consider an electric car yet where I live. I'm sure many of you have that same problem. Hopefully, but it's coming, but not yet. Then you've got the heat, which people now die of heat, and but they also that's what spurns all the wildfires, and the wildfires set off the smoke and the toxins in the air. So we've just got this vicious cycle going of just, it's like we're turning up the dial on the earth. I saw a really disturbing or read a really disturbing story yesterday about monkeys in Mexico. Almost 150 monkeys were falling out of trees, dead,
Oh
howler
my
monkeys
gosh.
from the heat. So
Oh,
they think it had to do with they're experiencing extreme heat there right now. So anyway, the point is, we're everything's being affected, right? And we can't change big corporations. We can't stop corporate greed or whatever we think is behind some of this that we can't do anything about. We don't have the infrastructure. And again, I'm talking about the United States, so can picture a lot of other countries in the world that maybe are decades off from having some of this stuff. That's not the way we can approach it. What we can do is be mindful, like try to be conscientious about what we're doing before we buy anything, pause and consider again before you do it. Try donating or turning in like for an upgrade instead of landfill. Try using reusable water bottles instead of plastic. I actually love the metal straws too,
yeah, I do
much better
too.
than the plastic. And I will tell you that here, again, because we have really strict laws about a lot of this stuff, because plastic straws are banned in most places, what you get is a paper straw.
Do not give me a paper straw.
Oh, it's
Ugh.
horrible.
So
It it's
gross.
like I have chills right now just saying it. I can't stand that on the feel on my teeth.
It's
Anyway,
like
but
it's
that's
like when you and I don't know if other people have this, but like when you finish a popsicle
oh yeah,
and
I
your
do.
teeth get on the wooden stick. Oh, it's so disgusting.
Yeah, no, no, can't do it. So anyway, that's a good motivator for me to carry my metal straws around with me. Another really easy thing, and I have started doing this. I've been doing this now for about the past year. Is I'm a big Amazon user. I think all of us, it's a
Mm.
love-hate situation. But I am now, unless there's really some urgent reason, always checking the box that is you pick a little bit slower delivery, like 2 or 3 days instead of the next 5 hours, so that your stuff comes in one box or in one van instead of for a while there I was getting like 3 deliveries a day. Like so if you think about the emissions from the vans or the trucks and then you think about the cardboard and anyway, so that's like an easy thing to do. It's very painless. But I think that like overall, each person has to figure out what they're willing to maybe sacrifice, even if it's just a tiny sacrifice, like carrying around your own water bottle, and what you can't. And like I said, there are some things I just know I'm not going to do it, but I can certainly do other things that help mitigate it. And that's kind of what we're saying to consider, asking everybody to consider is what could you do slightly differently, even. Like, we're not going to give up all conveniences in life, but I really do love what you said, Melissa, about the why wouldn't it cause us some extra work? Because we can't be here without the planet, right?
No.
So I think that that's kind of a maybe a good analogy of what it means to serve the greater good.
Yeah.
Beneficial to both, beneficial to all. Like really trying to think through what are we doing? And maybe not to ourselves. Maybe with all the PFAs we'll still live to be, 80, 90 years old, but what are we doing to our children or our children's children or all of the other living creatures on the earth? So it may feel like, again, an overwhelming problem that one person can't make a difference, But if you think of the billions of people on this planet, if millions even start to just be mindful about consumption, be mindful about waste, and be mindful about the fact that we have an impact on everything we come into contact with, living or
Mhm.
not, right? So if it's chemicals, we're either ingesting them or we're spreading them, for instance. Or if it's a living thing, we're either nurturing it or we're killing it. I don't know. If you can't think of another thing, think about, do you want to be delayed on your next vacation because the airplane can't fly? Like, there's all kinds of ways we can find something to motivate us to at least take some steps to just taking responsibility for the impact we have by being here.
It's funny, we kind of, my husband and I, we really are pretty good about our waste. And we kind of make it like not a reward for ourselves, but like we're proud of ourselves if we don't have to take our trash can to the curb every week. So we're like, because we usually, maybe every 2 weeks we take it out because we are
Wow.
pretty good with our waste. Yeah. Recycle is different, but like I said, I do I do wash my recycles. But if I don't have to take the trash can out to the curb, I'm like, yeah, we did it.
I'm
I know that's
impressed.
crazy, but yeah, no, we're pretty good about it. But I will say, I think that if you can just, the world, the earth it's not endless resources. It may have felt like that in the past, but I mean, the evidence is clear that that is not the case. Think about how much you take from the planet and how much you actually give to the planet. And I know that might sound a little absurd to some people that don't maybe follow my path of thinking, but the earth is a living, breathing thing. And you can't just continue to take and take and take and take and not expect it to keep replenishing itself. So that's not going to happen. We have to give something back. And if that means nurturing it and taking care of it, then that's really what we could try to do better.
I think that's a beautiful message, and I'm impressed. I always have to take my trash can out every week. It's not always full, but it's always enough that it needs to go out. So you've given me a new benchmark to try to hit. I would pass out if I could skip a week of not taking the trash
And I
out
have a
again.
family of 4 right now.
I
So it's,
know.
yeah, it's pretty good. We,
That's
we do
really
pretty well.
good.
Yeah.
All right, so now we all have something to aspire to. See if we can skip a week of having to take our trash out.
And that's the other thing I wanted to say too is that think about your trash bags because the trash bag itself is plastic, right? And if you're
Yep.
sticking things in the trash that are biodegradable, that can break down, maybe don't put them in a trash bag and
Yeah.
stick it in a paper bag or something that will break down because once it's in that trash bag, it's not going anywhere for a long time. So if
Yeah.
you can do something to where it's being put either into a biodegradable trash bag or something like that, it's going to break down a lot easier. And something like that, where it's not plastics and stuff, it's compostables, that's actually going to give back to the planet.
Well, that's a great tip. Yeah, and if you live in an area that doesn't have a recycling program, then
Mhm.
maybe your contribution could be calling your local council person or your congressman or whoever, whoever's in charge to say, why don't we have
Yeah.
a recycling program, right? And it's going to
Yes.
be money, but if enough people call, then maybe they'll decide that it's worth it to help save the planet. So
Yeah. Yeah.
well, I so appreciate your time in joining us, and I hope that you learned something from this. And this is yet a new way, different way to practice mindfulness that benefits everyone. And we'd love to hear from you. So, if you have a specific challenge or problem that you want to know how to handle mindfully, get that over to us, and we'll be happy to talk about it on one of the shows to see if we can help you work through. Because if you've got that problem, telling you thousands to many more probably have the same problem. So anything
Yeah.
specific, please share.
And I do monitor all of our socials. So if you don't want to shoot us an email, just comment on something on one of our social channels. Our YouTube channel, I am always on the comments there. So if you want to say something to us there, happy to have a conversation. And yeah, would love to hear from you.
As always, we encourage you to be mindful, and we hope you're back here again next week. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This podcast is part of the Airwave Media Podcast Network. Visit airwavemedia.com to listen and subscribe to other great shows. Visit our website, amindfulmoment.com, to access podcasts, scripts, and reading recommendations. A Mindful Moment is hosted by Teresa McKee and Melissa Sims. This podcast is produced by Work to Live Productions. Thank you for tuning in.